Dinosaur Archipelago. Chapter 1. The Hunt. August 20th, 2518. I woke to the sounds I always had, ambiances that I was so used to hearing that it was as if they were not even present. I groaned as I stretched my arms out and yawned loudly. Today was the first time ever that I had decided to write about my experiences in a day in my journal, a large book about the same thickness as a giant dictionary, which I kept sketches and notes of all the creatures I encountered and the days I encountered them, first and last, as well as their classification and other general info. I reached over and grabbed the book out of the leather satchel that I held it in and examined the rest of the grotto from the small space in the rock I used as a hiding spot to sleep. I would sleep on the ground next to Kaida, but there were small predators that had been skulking around near the grotto lately. The grotto is the name I gave to the grotto, which was obscured from most by a waterfall. It had been the place I had bolted to for sanctuary 11 long years ago, when Kaida was just a mere hatchling. She was a Saraniops pachytholus, a taxa that had become more and more difficult to find on this god-forsaken island. I glanced over to see her still asleep, her chest rising and falling. A thin smile stretched across my face. She was my only friend in this hell I had been condemned to live in. I hopped down from my bed and strode over to my companion. I reached a hand out and stroked her scaly snout. "All right, girl, it's time to wake up. Got a long day of hunting ahead of us," I whispered excitedly. I always woke her up like that. We both liked the routine. Well, I hate routine, but this island forced me to accept and embrace it. However, it also required that I be flexible and adaptable to change. Without that, I would have been dead years ago. Kaida's bright eyes opened wide and focused on me, blinking several times. They were huge and were colored a fiery red with bits of amber around the edges. Her scales were colored a rich emerald green to blend in with the bright tropical foliage, which all around would have made any wildlife photographer or sketcher drool over how beautiful a sight she would be to capture. A truly magnificent beast. The company that had created her had modified her kind's genes so that she actually did have eyes that resembled those of the character that her genre was named after. She nudged me affectionately with her scaly snout. She was still not fully grown at 8 meters long and 2.5 meters tall. She was a part of the family of dinosaurs known as the Carcharodontosauridae. The genre that Kaida belonged to was smaller than other relatives. The taxa she would be most closely related to were the 6 to 8 meter long Eocarcharia dinops, the 8.5 to 10 meter long Pteropriscosaurus milneri, and the 11.5 meter long Acrocanthosaurus atockensis. These four were much more basal than the Carcharodontosaurinae, which consisted of Giganotosaurus carolinii, Carcharodontosaurus saharicus, Carcharodontosaurus agadensis, Mapusaurus rosae, and Tyrannotitan chubatensis, which were not present on the island to my knowledge. In fact, there was only one other taxa from the Carcharodontosauridae I found on this particular island, which was now extinct. That would be Shaoqilong mauturensis. Today we were likely going to hunt a bunch of 2-meter long feathered ornithomimus dongi. These were extremely tough to catch, even for the fastest and most skilled of predators. Despite this, Kaida and I had been killing and eating small game like them for years now. The reason we hunted small prey and not bigger game like the 7-meter sauropod Gondwana titan faustoi is fairly simple if you think about it. There is so much meat on the prey that the two of us would be unable to finish it in one sitting. This meant that it would attract all kinds of other predators to our hideout, which would be extraordinarily bad, as well as it would be a pain for the two of us to try and drag such a heavy body through the shallow pond, through the waterfall, and up into the grotto. There were other prey animals too, but S. dongi was so much more common than that I usually expected to encounter them most often. Ever since she got to 4 meters, she would find a group of them and start the chase. After that, I would have snares laid out to trip up any prey who walked into them. I would also use a bow and arrow from my crew's old weapon storage to shoot arrows, some of which were replacements tipped with the shed teeth of kaitas, which I had whittled down to an arrowhead. The arrows would usually be a last resort if kaita or the snare didn't catch them first. When I began my long stay at this island, I was a terrible archer. I learned to become better, though. In this kind of place, a bow and arrow is much better for hunting than a firearm for several reasons. The first is that you usually can reuse arrows if you're careful with your shots, while with a firearm you need fresh bullets every time, unless you want to ruin your gun. Another critical reason was sound. When you fire a gun, the sound of the shot would ring throughout the surrounding area, and that may scare off smaller predators like Jura Tyrant, Langhami, a 4-meter-long basal tyrannosauroid, and Pyroraptor olympius, a 1.5-meter-long dromaeosaur. It would not scare off the island's larger and more terrifying residents. In fact, it had the opposite effect. My crew had found that out the hard way 11 years ago. If the arrow didn't kill the prey, I would slit its throat with a knife made of kaita's shed teeth, bound to a piece of wood as a hilt. Kaita was not to begin feeding until I cut the parts out that I needed for making jerky strips. Once I had done that, she would be free to tear up the prey to bits and gulp it down or just swallow it completely whole. From the time she could first hunt, I had taught her to obey me. I was the alpha, and she knew and respected that. I, however, treated her with enough love and respect that she would not tear me apart while I slept.